In today's video, I'm walking you through the entire PMP application process from the very beginning to the very end so that you can write your PMP application and submit it successfully to PMI. And I'm even going to explain how to write your project description and minimize your risk of being audited by PMI. So let's get started. Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Alvin and I'm all about helping you become certified in project management and passing your PMP exam. So if you're looking to advance your career in project management and become certified, hit that subscribe button and smash that like button so you don't miss any of my future upcoming videos. All of the strategies that I'll be sharing in today's video can be found in my free PMP Application Strategy Guide cheat sheet, which walks you step by step through the entire PMP application process, and it contains all of my recommended strategies, tips, and lessons learned so that you can write your PMP application the easy way and minimize your risks of being audited by PMI. So if you're struggling and you need any help with writing your actual PMP application, go ahead and download your copy of your free PMP application cheat sheet guide over at alvinthepm.com/cheat sheet. So to get started with writing your PMP application, let me first start sharing my screen and then we'll go through it together. But make sure you stick until the end of today's video so that you can watch step by step with how I would write my own project description with submitting the PMP application. So without further ado, let's get started. The first step to creating your PMP application is to first baseline your project management experience from your professional working career. Before you start creating your PMP application on PMI's website, I strongly encourage you to baseline and to first ask yourself the following questions. And the reason is that this will help you figure out immediately which projects you can use on your PMP application and if you already meet the minimum years of required experience. The first question that you should ask yourself is, what is your highest level of education? Meaning, do you have a bachelor's degree or a higher level of education such as a master's or a doctoral PhD degree? Or do you only have an associate's degree or a high school diploma? If your highest level of education is at least a bachelor's degree, then you only need 3 years of experience with leading and managing your projects. On the other hand, if your highest level of education is an associate's degree or a high school diploma, then you'll need 5 years of experience leading and managing projects. So once you've answered this question, now we can start narrowing down and figuring out which projects to use in your application. The second question is, which projects have you led and managed in the past several years? The third question is, did you lead each of these projects through all stages of the project's lifecycle, through initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and lastly, closing? The fourth question is, when did each project begin and end? And for the last final question, with all of the projects that you've listed, do any of these projects overlap? And if they do, during which dates do they overlap? So to get started, I encourage you to open up Microsoft Excel and to start listing out the projects that you've led from the past several years. So that you can follow along, I've opened up Microsoft Excel and I'll be listing out examples of fictitious projects here. Remember, and as a friendly disclaimer, this is for reference only and do not actually represent real-life projects. So for my first project, let's call it the development of a new electromechanical hardware system, which followed a traditional waterfall approach. The team consisted of more than 20 team members with a budget between $5 to $10 million. And the project started from January 2019 and ended in December 2019. We want to repeat this for the remaining projects that we've led and managed. Moving on to our second project, let's say that it's the development of a new software application under Company 2. Because it involves leading a software development team using a Scrum framework, it followed an agile approach. The team consisted of 10 to 14 team members with a budget between $1 to $5 million. The project started from January 2020 and ended in December 2020. And for my final project, Let's call it the implementation of software upgrades at customer sites under company number 3. It followed a hybrid approach for developing and deploying the software upgrades at each location. The project team consisted of more than 20 team members. The project had a budget between $1 to $5 million starting in January 2021 and ending in December 2021. Now I've kept this list very simple so that you can follow along, very straightforward, and you can use this as a baseline when you're filling out your actual example for your PMP application. So with this list, we can clearly see that we have 3 years of experience leading and managing projects starting from 2019 and ending in 2021. If your projects do overlap, however, then you can only count the experience which is non-overlapping. In this example, Project A starts on June 1, 2019 and ends on December 31, 2019. Project B, on the other hand, starts on January 1, 2019 and ends on August 31, 2019. We can see here that both projects overlap from June to August 2019. Unfortunately, you cannot double count the experience that you have during these 3 months. It would only be counted once. Now you might be confused as to what this actually means and how this applies to you. Well, the experience which would count towards your application would be from January to May for Project B, and for Project A, your experience would count from June to December of 2019. Once you've identified your entire list of projects, we can now move on to filling out the application on PMI's website. If you like what you've seen so far, don't forget to smash that like button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out on my future upcoming videos. Now, before you can do this, the very first thing that you'll need to do is to create your own personal account with PMI. Fill out every single field that's shown on the screen and hit submit. It's completely free to register on PMI's website, and once you have a PMI account, then you'll be able to apply to different project management certifications, such as the CAPM, the PMP, or the PMI ACP certifications. But for today's video, we're mainly going to focus on how to fill out your PMP application. Once you've signed up and you've created your own account, go to the Certifications tab at the top of the window and click on Project Management Professional. This will take you to this page, giving you an entire overview of the PMP certification, the domains which are covered on your exam, and something else that I do want to note here. It tells you that it tests your knowledge on 3 key approaches: the predictive, agile, and hybrid project management approaches. So as you continue to scroll down, you'll see that the 2 most important resources that you should download immediately are the PMP Exam Content Outline and the Certification Handbook. Now I encourage you to download, read, and familiarize yourself with both of these documents, because this will give you an idea of what topics are covered on your actual exam and what the entire process is for submitting your PMP application. Scrolling down even further is where you'll see what the requirements are in order to take your PMP exam. This section is very important because before you can apply to take your exam, you actually do need to meet a minimum number of requirements. As we've discussed previously, if you have a 4-year bachelor's degree, then you'll only need 36 months experience leading projects, or in other words, about a minimum of 3 years in which your role was the project lead or the project manager. However, if you don't yet have a 4-year degree, but you have an associate's degree or high school diploma, then you'll need a minimum of 60 months leading projects, or approximately 5 years. Keep in mind that for both scenarios, you need to either have 35 hours of project management training or the CAPM certification. So my personal advice to you is, if you already earned your CAPM certification, then save your money and save your time. There's no need for you to sign up and take a 35-hour project management course. Instead, you can use that time to start studying for your exam prep books and begin taking practice questions and exam simulators. The last thing that I want to emphasize here is that taking the PMP exam does cost money, but remember, it's well worth the investment. At the time of this recording, if you're not yet a PMI member, then your exam will cost you $555. But if you are a PMI member, then it will cost you $405. Now, I'll be covering the benefits of a PMI membership in more detail in a separate video, so make sure you subscribe to my channel. Scrolling back to the top of the screen, click on Apply Now for your PMP, and this will begin your first step in your actual PMP application. You'll be taken to this page where you have to list out your academic education and your professional education project management. The first section is where you list your educational background. What is your highest level of education? Is it an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a PhD? Fill this out and also specify the years that you attended your college, the name of your university, and the field that you studied in. So for example, it could be engineering, operations, or business administration. Once you click Save Education, you should see a green check mark appear to the right-hand side of your screen, indicating that you completed this section correctly. As we scroll down, the next section is for filling out your professional education in project management. This is the section where you enter in the course that you took that meets the 35 hours of minimum educational requirements in project management. So for example, this could be your PMP Exam Prep Seminar by Joseph Phillips from Udemy, the Google Project Management Certification course from Coursera, Prepcast, or a live in-person course that's taught at your local university or college. But remember, this must include 35 hours of education in project management. If you don't yet meet this educational requirement, I encourage you to use a PMP Exam Prep course from Udemy, as they're very affordable and at extremely low prices and are often on sale at discounts. If the course you use do not include 35 hours of education, then this will not meet the PMP application requirements. After you fill out your course dates and the qualifying hours and you click on Save Education, you should see a green check mark appear to your right-hand side, showing that the 35 hours requirement was satisfied. I want to pause here and note that if you already have your CAPM certification, then this section will show that you already meet your education requirements, and you will not need to fill out this section for professional education. After you click on Continue to Experience, then you'll be taken to a screen where you can start listing out your entire experience. This is where the bulk and the meat of your application will be, and where you'll want to spend some time drafting your project descriptions before you input them directly into your online application. Before we dive into how to write your project description, let me first explain what you have to fill out for this form. Let's go through this line by line so you understand what exactly each of these items mean and why they're required here. The first term here is the project title. What exactly is your project called? Be explicitly clear what you call your title so it's clear that it's a project and not a sustaining operations or a day-to-day activity. So for example, development of a new electromechanical hardware system project. The second line item is for your organization. In this case, I'll be using company number 1. The job title. Now this is something that everyone gets very anxious and worried about, especially if their title is not an actual project manager. Now trust me when I tell you this, but state here what your actual job title is. Be honest to yourself and ethical. If your true job title is an analyst, a planner, engineer, or marketing associate, list that here. PMI only cares about what your role is on the project as a project lead or project manager, leading the different stages of your team throughout the project lifecycle. They don't necessarily care if you were an engineer or an analyst, as long as you can demonstrate the experience that you've led and managed your projects. For a functional reporting area, select the department that you work in. So in this example, let's say that we're supporting the research and department R&D subdivision. For the organization's focus, which one here best aligns with what your organization does? In this example, for our PMP application, let's say that we're using manufacturing. For the approach and methodology, you have to recall what type of project management approach did you use when you were leading your project? Was it predictive, strictly agile, or a hybrid mixture of the two? In this example, let's put the traditional waterfall approach. For your team size, select how many team members were on your project. So for our example, let's put 20 or more. And remember, for this part, you don't have to be very specific, and that's why it tells you different brackets that you can use for your team size. For your project budget, if you're not quite sure what your budget is, I recommend that you do as best of an estimate as you can. If your project is strictly confidential and maybe it's tied to a government-related project that can't be shared with the public, then you can select confidential. For our example in our application, let's use $5 to $10 million. For our timeline regarding our project dates, let's put here that the project started on January 1, 2019 and ended on December 31, 2019. If your project is still in progress at the time that you're completing your application and it hasn't finished yet, then simply check mark the box that says in progress. And lastly, for our project description, this is where you provide a mini paragraph that lists your experience on the project. Make sure you follow explicitly what PMI is requesting you to include: the project objective, the outcome, your role on the project, your responsibilities, and your deliverables. One very important thing to note here is that the description must be between 200 to 500 words. Do your best to keep it as close to 500 words as possible so that your application is robust and it accurately describes your experience with leading your project. You will need to fill out this entire form for every project that you've led until you meet the total number of 36 months of experience. So with that out of the way, let's go on and understand how to fill out your project description so you can understand how to minimize your risk of being audited by PMI. To make filling out your project descriptions easier, I recommend that you open up Microsoft Word and draft your project descriptions here. That way, you can review and edit your paragraphs easily and keep track of the word count as you continue to write each one. Now, I wrote this short checklist that you can use to make sure you include everything that you need to when you're writing your project descriptions. If you feel lost and a little bit confused, start by asking yourself each of the following questions. The first question is to identify what is your project objective. Next, write out what your project's outcome is, followed by your role and your responsibilities on the project. For step number 5, determine what your project deliverables are. Now, these could be tangible physical items such as documents, test reports, the physical product itself, and so on and so forth. And lastly, as a final check to make sure that you have everything that you need, verify that your project description is between 200 and 500 words. So as we go through this, I will be sharing an example of how I would write the project description for this specific example project. Again, as I've mentioned previously, this is to be used as a reference only. Do not copy this and do not use this for your own application. Be trustworthy, be honest with yourself, and ethical when you're writing and submitting your PMP application. And again, do not plagiarize. So with this checklist, let's get started with writing the description for our very first project, the development of a new electromechanical hardware system. So starting off with step 1, what is the project objective? The objective of the project is to develop a new electromechanical hardware device in order to increase the organization's market share and drive increased revenue in the manufacturing industry. A few words of my own advice here. Notice that I do my best to tie the project objective back to the impact that this would have on the organization. For the second step, what was the project's outcome? The project was successfully completed, and I led the team to successfully develop, manufacture, and validate the electromechanical device against the customer's acceptance criteria. The product was successfully launched on time to market, with all test results being approved by management. For the project outcome verbiage here, I explicitly state whether the project was successful or not and what the final end result was. So in this case, it was the development, manufacturing, and validation of the electromechanical device by the customer with an on-time delivery to market. For the third step, what is your role in the project? This should be the most straightforward question. As the project lead, I was responsible for managing the project and leading the team through all stages of the project's lifecycle. For this step, make sure you explicitly state that you are the project lead, not an engineer, supply chain buyer, an assistant, or a coordinator. This is not where you state where your job title is. Refer back a few minutes into the video so you can see what I'm referring to, but in here, you must state that you led and you manage the project if you want to minimize your risk of being audited by PMI. Remember, PMI is looking for your experience that you've actually led and managed projects. Now the next question is, what is your responsibility on the project? This is the area that brings the most confusion to so many people, including myself, when I was writing my own PMP application. The key to success is that you need to include several sentences describing your responsibilities through each stage of the project's life cycle. So it's from initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So I know that's confusing, so let's go through each stage of the responsibilities together for our example project. The first one is through initiation. During the initiation phase, I developed the project charter and obtained approval from the project sponsor. I used a stakeholder register to identify the key stakeholders, and I captured all project assumptions critical to begin the design work with our customers. I also conducted brainstorming sessions with the team to discuss high-level risks and milestones critical to developing the electromechanical product. In this paragraph, I specifically state key project management verbiage, such as the project charter, the sponsor, stakeholder register, and risks to show that I'm leading the project during the initiation phase. So my advice to you is, and this applies to any part of your project description, use your PMBOK terminology when you're writing out your descriptions. That way, it will be very clear to PMI that your role was a project lead or a project manager following the best practices from the PMBOK guide. Now on to the next phase for planning. During the planning phase, I led the team to conduct a requirements analysis and define the requirements up front using prototypes with our customers. I prepared the project management plan, and I worked with the team to define the scope baseline, estimate the project's budget, and create the WBS. Additionally, I conducted workshops with the team to finalize the project schedule for completing all design and development activities with the vendor. Similar to the initiation phase, my advice here is continue to use explicit terminology from PMI's PMBOK guide to show that you're leading and you're managing a project, such as requirements analysis and WBS. Notice that I also include specific verbiage regarding the project, such as all design and development activities with the vendor. Now onto the execution phase. In the execution phase, I directed and managed the team's work, ensuring that all activities were being completed within the project scope and as outlined in the project management plan. I managed communications with all team members and vendors through weekly face-to-face phone calls and virtual team meetings. I also led the team to mitigate the risk of schedule delays and testing failures by procuring material in advance and developing a robust testing plan with the engineering team. Now, as my own words of advice, it's within the execution phase that you need to describe how you led and managed your team's work. In this example, I discuss how I made sure that we completed work within the project scope and as per the project management plan. List here any kind of tools or techniques that you used to help facilitate and drive communication with your team and to manage and mitigate the risks. Let's go on to the monitoring and controlling phase. During the monitoring and controlling phase, I monitored the project schedule and budget, and I ensured that the project activities were completed on time and within budget. I also developed weekly status reports to communicate the project's progress to the team members and to senior management. As my own personal advice, this is where I discuss keeping status and track of the project schedule and the budget and how I would report the project's performance to leadership. And the last phase is, of course, closure. In the closing phase of the project, I led the team to successfully launch the product to the customers, which successfully met all acceptance criteria. I led the team to release all engineering drawings and test reports in the organization's database. And lastly, I documented the project's performance in a final report, which was approved by senior management. This paragraph is a great way to summarize how you ended the project. In this example, it's launching the product to market and deploying it to your customers and meeting all of the acceptance criteria. The last and final question to include in your project description is what are the deliverables for your project? The deliverables for this project include engineering drawings and the successful completion and approval of test reports by the vendors and senior management. Now, when you put everything together, this is the final result for your project description. In Microsoft Word, this is what it's going to look like. If we select all of our words and paragraphs, and if we go to the bottom left-hand navigation panel of Microsoft Word, and you click here, we can see that our entire project description consists of 418 words. This meets the minimum requirement for PMI's application to be between 200 and 500 words, and we should be all set for writing this description for our first project. Now, before we move on to the next step, if you like what you've seen so far, make sure you subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of my future upcoming videos to help you become certified in project management. With our draft of our project descriptions completed, let's go back to the application and copy and paste it inside. You'll see to the top right that it shows our word count is 418 words, which means that it meets the minimum criteria for PMI's project description count. Scrolling up, let's just make sure that everything is filled out and we should be all set. So let's click on the button Save Experience, and you'll immediately see that the experience summary section on your right-hand side shows that we have 12 months of experience so far, which means that we only need 24 more months of project management experience. Let's click on Add Additional Experience, and the same form will appear to the bottom of the screen containing everything that we need to fill out again. For the second project, let's call it the development of a new software application project. For the organization, let's put company number 2, and our job title was that of an engineer. Let's list our functional reporting area as research or research and development, and from the options shown here, let's put our organization's primary focus as manufacturing. The approach that we used for leading the project was agile, with a team size of 10 to 14 people and a budget between $1 to $5 million. The project started in January 2020 and ended in December 2020. To show you what it looks like to complete the rest of your PMP application online, let's copy and paste the draft of our first description into this box here. Please note that this is for reference only and that you would need to specify your actual second project description and not copy and paste the same one over and over again. After you click on the Save Experience button, you will see that your total experience summary has now changed to 24 months, and you'll only need 12 more months of experience to complete your application. So let's resume with our third project. Let's call the project title The Implementation of Software Upgrades at Customer Sites. And we worked on this at company number 3 as an engineer. Our functional reporting area was within IT, and our organization's primary focus is information technology. The approach that we used to lead the project was hybrid, and our team size consisted of more than 20 people with a budget of $1 to $5 million. The project started on January 2021 and ended in December of 2021. Copying and pasting our example in the description box, we have everything that we need. So let's click on the button for Save Experience. The experience summary window to the right now shows that we have a total of 36 months of project management experience, and we meet all of PMI's requirements. Clicking on the button Continue to Exam Details, and we'll be taken to the last page of this application. And by the way, if you haven't done so already, and if you need help writing your application for your PMP exam, make sure you download my free PMP Application cheat sheet, which walks you step by step through the entire PMP application process, and it contains all of my recommended strategies and lessons learned so that you can write your application and minimize your risk of getting audited by PMI. So grab your copy over at alvinthepm.com/cheat sheet. Getting back to our PMP application, in the first section here, we'll have to fill out our country, our home address. Again, for example purposes here, specifying a fake address to show you the entire application process, but you want to use your actual home address here when you're filling out your PMP application. In city, let's put that we're living in San Francisco, and you'll then see the following information. make sure that you verify that your name is listed correctly here in both of these sections, since this is what's going to show up on your actual PMP certification. Once you've done that, verify that your email address and your phone address is correct in the event that PMI has to contact you over the phone or through email. Verify that the exam location is correct. In our example here, we're living in the country for the United States. And in this area here, confirm if you need any type of exam accommodations. At the bottom of the screen, you'll need to agree to the terms and agreements and check mark here that all information that you've provided is accurate and complete. So once you're done, you can click on Submit Application and your PMP application will be submitted and sent over to PMI for their review and approval. This is the last step of the application process and you should be all set. Once you submit your application to PMI, wait approximately 5 to 7 days to hear back from PMI. If you're not contacted directly, log on to your PMI account and you'll see a message on your dashboard telling you whether your application has been approved or if PMI is requesting your application to be audited. As I tell other people, I encourage you to make a list of all of your contacts who can speak to your project management experience that you're submitting on your application before you submit your actual application to PMI. Make a list of at least one person for each of your projects and let them know in advance that you're applying to take your PMP certification exam. That way, if you do get audited by PMI, you can let them know and there shouldn't be any kinds of issues with having your application being verified by your point of contact and sending for your reference. Also, if you are audited, make sure that you have copies of your university and college diploma and a certificate or a transcript showing that you meet the 35 hours of project management education. Once your application has been approved by PMI, you can then select a date to take your PMP exam either virtually at home using your own personal computer or taking the exam in person at a test taking center. I encourage you to take the exam at a physical testing center so that you don't have to worry about issues with internet connectivity, your webcam not working, or in case you just don't have the room in your apartment or your house to remove any kinds of in-person distractions and noises. So once you made it to this point, all that's left to do is to study and take your PMP exam. Since the PMP exam does cover a larger emphasis on Agile than the predictive approach, check out this video here to learn more about the Agile versus Waterfall approach and my strategies with how I passed my PMP exam above target in all domains.